Here we're going to explain the basics of setting up Fraps for recording games and your desktop and whatever else that you want to be recording. Fraps is an awesome little utility. If you don't have it already, go and buy it. Okay, you can see the options that I have here. They're the best options. The only real option that you really want to be messing around with is the Monitor Aero Desktop DWM. That enables you to record your desktop. So if you're trying to make a video similar to what I'm doing right now, then that's the option that you want to select so that you can record your desktop and it doesn't just load up the game stuff. Right, the next set of options that you have is under the FPS section. This is basically a benchmarking tool. The FPS, frame times, minimum, max, average frame times. Okay, and you've also got an option of setting the amount of time that you want the benchmark to run for. Now you set the hotkey, in this case is F11. You then set the FPS, frame rate, minimum, maximum, average rates. In this case I haven't got any of these selected because I don't use this function. To me it's absolutely useless, but it's good to have. Some people there will actually use that and will actually use it for benchmarking things. For me, I don't need it, so I've left all of those unchecked. Okay, now the overlay hotkey is F12. Now this is used for displaying the frame rate that you currently have in game. I use this for when I'm playing games so that I can see if it's actually impacting my game performance. So for instance, if you've got a not so good computer and you get an average frame rate of say 30 FPS, expect your FPS to drop to 15 to 20. In some cases it may not drop at all, but some games you'll find that it drops drastically. Okay, the next set of options is the movies section. Under the movies, this is where you actually set the details for recording. Now I have Control F9, which is a key which isn't part of any of the games that I'm using. Control F9 works for me. I've also specified the location that I want it to store the movies in. The default location is fine. In this instance it's actually running onto an SSD, so okay. I've also set the video capture settings. In this case I'm using 30 FPS. Most of my games run at 60 plus, but every now and again it will drop a little bit if I'm playing online games and all of a sudden lots of people turn up. So what I do is I set it to 30 because that's the lowest I would ever expect it to drop to. Okay, in this case I'm also using full size rather than half size because I want to record the original size, not have it dropped in half. When you drop it in half, or half sizing, what you find is that letters and words on screen tend to not be as clear. Okay, so that's something to think about. Right, and then under the sound capture settings you've got the options for recording everything. You can either do that as a stereo or as a multi-channel. You've also got an additional option to record a microphone. For this I've actually enabled the microphone and I'm using it for recording the audio. Another thing that you have is the hide mouse cursor in video. I have this off, okay, because you know my mouse goes everywhere, I'm doing lots of different things, and the last thing people want to see in the middle of my game is my mouse jumping all around the place. Now depending on what you're doing depends on what settings that you're going to have here. I just leave that because it's the way I prefer it, but for you, you may want to have that enabled. Okay, the other things are lock frame rate while recording, which basically tries to lock the frame rate. Now this is good if you're playing something which has low graphics quality, so your graphics card keeps it really easily and keep a steady 30 FPS or 60 FPS, whatever you're using. If you don't have that, then it's not such a good idea because effectively you end up with a bitty video where it stutters all over the place, which nobody wants to watch that. Now to the last section is screenshots. Again, I don't actually use this feature. I actually use the in-game screenshotting features, so you know, most of these settings are fine left as they are as default. So you set the location that you want the screenshots to be captured to, the shortcut key to start the screen captures, the file type, which is the image format, so that will be BMP, JPG, PNG or TGA. once you've set the file format, you can then use the screen capture settings. Now, you've got the include frame rate overlay on screenshots, so it basically includes the FPS on the screenshot. What you can then do is you can also set the screen capture to repeat, so every X amount of seconds, in this case I have 10, so every 10 seconds it's going to take a screenshot until I stop the screen captures from running. We're going to quickly run through making a Fraps video with Premiere and the setup that's required. First off, we need to go to the video file that we've recorded with Fraps. Now, I've got one here already. I've selected this already. Now, what you'll need to do is check what the dimensions are for the video. In this case, it's 1920 wide by 1080 high. Now, we need to load Premiere. Once Premiere is loaded, we need to start a new project. In this case, we're just going to call it game tutorial, yeah? Right, everything else is left fine. Right, now we need to set the actual sequence type. Now, I'm going to call this game tutorial. Okay, now what we need to do is find a format which actually matches our video. Now we can either create a custom one or use one that's already pre-created. As you'll see here, there is a different selection of format types. So DVC Pro HD, 1080i 60 or 50, 1080p. Right, okay, this is the one that I would normally use. Okay, now if you want to create a custom one, you can go to settings and then you can start changing these options here. So you can have custom, you can set the frame rate, you can then set the type. Okay, now dependent on your video, you may want to choose square pixels. You may also want to use something like a 16:9 PAL or NTSC depending on your region. In this case, I'm just going to use a preset. This is just a quick tutorial after all. You can have a play with these settings at your own leisure. Right, okay. First off, we've got nothing. It's just a blank setup. Now what we need to do is load in the actual video file. So basically what I'm going to do, drag and drop. This clip does not match the sequence settings. Change sequence to match the clip settings. Yes, why not? Job done. Okay, that's automatically changed everything for you. Okay, so now let's just move this to the beginning of the timeline. Right, okay, now we've got no source clips, but we do have some effects controls here. So if you find that you're getting some weird bars at the side, what you can do is you can use the motion and scale. Right, and that will then be used to change, so you can make it just a slight bit bigger or smaller if you've not quite got the right aspect ratio, but you should have if you have set up the sequence correctly. As what I did here, I made it match the video. So I used what I thought was a basic preset and then I just let it sort itself out. Okay, right, the next option is we need to sort the video out. So basically what you can do is you can grab the slider, slide it in and out, and it will change the end time on the video. In this case, I want to stop the video here, and then also for the start time, look, we can just do the same kind of an adjustment here, so we can work out what's happening where roughly. And I think I'm gonna start the video here. Right, okay, so we can see that we've got a start and an end. Right, I'm just going to pull this again to the start of the video. Right, okay, and by using this here, we can actually make this larger and smaller. Now what I want to do is I basically want the video to fade in and fade out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the effects section, video transition. I'm going to go dissolve, cross dissolve. Now cross dissolve will basically do a fade out. So if we then click the timeline to jump, and spacebar to play the video, or you can use this button here. And there we go. Oh, that was a bit loud. And there we go. We saw the actual video fade out. Okay, so that's kind of what we want. We can obviously adjust this fade out. Now, what you can do is, if we just make the timeline a little bit bigger, and if we jump to an out point, which is this, right, we now have the effects pop up. Okay, and so this is the duration here, so you can just click and drag the mouse and it will scroll that left or right, and that will change the time. Okay, now in this case I only want it to be, say, 5, 4, 3, 2 seconds. Okay, that's massive. Okay, and what we'll see is when we actually play that back, that's probably you see that fade was just a bit too long, so I think we should drop that down. Now I think what we have now is an appropriate fade. So it's not too quick and it's not too fast. Okay, so we've just added a fade to the end of the video. Now what we need to do, if you've got audio in your video, is go audio transitions, crossfade, and I like to use constant power. Okay, that fades out the audio quite nicely as well. And again, using the effects controls, you can then adjust the time that it fades. Okay, right, now that we've got that at the beginning of the video, at the end, sorry, right, what we want to do is add to the beginning of the video. So if we go to the beginning, right, what we want to do is add a cross dissolve, and what we'll see is, if we play that through, that it will actually just fade in. Okay, the default is quite fine for that, but there's lots of other types of fades. Now you've got a lot of different options within the effects window, so what you can do is you can add doors to that, and if you just drop it on top of the existing one, that will just replace that. So let's go to the did you see how that kind of opened in with a barn door effect? Right, okay, you've got things like swing in as well, so let's try that. Okay, so that opens in like a big gate and just slides right in there. Okay, you've got lots of other things in here, like you've got a map, so you can do special things with luminance or the channel maps, which can be quite nice effects. You know, everything has its place. Again, you've got things like page turn, which is quite a nice effect if you're trying to do a chapter type feature. And again, you know, all of these options, they all have their own kind of feature sets. Now if we just make this a little bit bigger, and we go to the beginning here, we select this. Again, if we do the show actual sources, that will show what it's doing there. So, you know, we can change kind of what it does. So if we did it like that, we can then see, you know, as we scroll through, just here it jumps. So instead of it going nice and smooth, it jumps now. So we've basically made that a little bit shorter. What we can also do is we can do something like this. So you're changing the in and out points of the actual page turn. You know, it starts off already half in, and then slowly and snaps all the way. So, you know, depending on what kind of effects you're trying to achieve there, you know, basic little functions there. Right, okay, you've got lots of other things. You know, you've got zoom. You know, one of the funky ones that you see a lot on the internet is like the zoom box effect, which is basically, you know, so as you can see what it's doing. So as you can see, it's just making zoom boxes basically. I'm going to leave it like that for this. So we now need to add in an audio fade, because you've probably noticed the audio is quite loud and it's not nice for it just to burst right in. So what you want to do is you want to add a small fade to that. So again, using the default here, again that fades in. So we've basically now got a video which is got a fade in, a fade out, and it's basically ready to render. So what we want to do now is save the project if you haven't done so already. It's always good to save at frequent intervals, because you can find that actually you've made a whole bunch of mistakes, you've done something wrong, and you just want to go back to an earlier state, and that makes life a little bit easier. But also, if the program crashes, you've not lost everything that you've done. You've got a point to start from. Okay, so anyway, back to the point of rendering. So what we need to do is select the timeline, then go movie, and then you've got export, and what you want is export media. This is now going to load up, and what we can see here is you've got the output. So at the moment we're going to get bars on the finished video. Now if we check the source, we can see that's full frames, that's got no bars on there. So if we then go back to the output, okay, now what we've got here is the actual export settings. Now at the moment it wants to be an AVI format, and it's NTSC DV, which is basically square pixels, square screen even, 4:3. Now what I've just done, I've expanded this a little bit so you can see what's going on here. Now what I would do is I would export for H.264, okay, and you've got a lot of settings here. Now what you can do is 1080p 25, okay. Now we can see on the output it's actually going to fit with no square bars. Now this is a default format, and it's actually a PAL format, so that's brilliant for the UK, and it will create a video of good quality which is good for uploading to YouTube. Now again, you've got lots of options here where you can change the bit rates and the way that it encodes. Now most of this is fine left as it is. Again, if you do create your own, then I would recommend creating a profile for that so that you can call it back anytime. Right, okay, so let's render this video out. There's two options here. What you can do is use export, or you can use Q. If you use Q, it will load the Adobe Media Encoder, and the job will be placed into a queue. I tend to use this quite often because it works quite quickly, and also while I've got jobs queued, I can work on the timeline in the video, make changes, or I could be working on a different sequence, getting that ready, adding that to the queue, so I can get like 3 or 4 different jobs done all at the same time, and then render them all out once they're done. So let's just add this to the queue, and we'll go through the media encoder, and we'll just do that, and we'll have a look at the outputted video. Right, as you can see, it's automatically loaded up the media encoder and added it to your timeline. Now if you don't do anything, it will time out and eventually run the job, or you can just start the job now. So as you can see, it's rendering up the video, and it's created its basic parts, and it's actually rendering what you've got in your timeline in Premiere. So while it's doing this, you can actually make changes to the timeline without it affecting the output of the render that you have in the queue. So again, if you realise that you've made a mistake, or you just want to try 2 different looks, you can send it to the queue, you can make the changes for the different type of look, and then you can then add that to the queue, and then you can get both to render out without having to have 2 separate projects or duplicating timelines for changes that you're not really sure. And again, you'll have your undo history, so you can always undo some of those changes to get back to the version that you like. Right, okay, that's enough of me talking. That video is now rendered. Right. And again, you've got the reset status, reveal source file, remove, reveal output file. So
Ball of terror.
that's the video playing now, and as you can see, that looks brilliant. It plays smooth. And
Please.
yeah, job done, I think.
DC. Teleport.